Well, I'm a retired Anglican clergyman. I'm a canon of St Andrew's Cathedral and Cairo Cathedral.
So, dear brother, why don't you say a little bit about your life in Mandatory Palestine, what you know, and how you came to faith, and what happened to you as an orphan. I think we'd all love to know this. We have a long history here, but unfortunately we have lost that history, and there are so many bits of it that we know nothing about anymore. And so you're a godsend, and you're going to help us to recover some of the story that we've lost over the years.
The pastor in my time was Martin, so he was pastorally very helpful. Being orphaned, because my parents had been killed by terrorists at the time, I became very ill with measles and double pneumonia, being placed in the German hospital, and because the Second World War was on, the Germans had to be interned, and so a social worker from Australia worked with the government to dispose of all of the orphans, who were all Arabic. So my first language was Arabic. And she got rid of all the Arabic children, but had a real problem with this English child. And because she recognised that I was very ill, she took me round to the CMJ hospital. And so gave me to Cyril Pileggi, one of the two doctors there. And he placed me straight away in the children's ward. So I was there for some months. Anyway, on Sundays, somebody from this church would come to the ward and teach the children basic biblical material, I said basic Bible stories. And he had a glass slide, which was still pretty modern in those days, so he could throw pictures up on the wall and would tell us the stories. And at some point of time, the story he told us was about the Good Shepherd. And he explained, he actually had a picture of Jesus carrying the lost sheep on the shoulder. And just explained how Jesus set everybody, all the other sheep aside, to find the lost sheep and cared for it. And I'm sitting up in my cot, at this stage a little bit better, having listened to that story with a bit of background from previous Sundays, and I said to myself, if Jesus can do that for a sheep, he can do it for me. And so I said, well, Jesus, whoever you really are, I'm orphaned, I've got nobody to care for me, and so I'm in your hands. So that's my beginning of my Christian life.
How old were you?
I was 4.5. And then Dr. Cyril Pileggi invited me to stay, after I got better, with his wife and daughter, who was only a year or so older than me. And so I lived with him in their section, which is where the headmistress of the school now lives, and stayed there for some years. My problem was that, of course, I only spoke Arabic. And he caught me down at the gate of the school, or the hospital then, speaking to the gatekeeper, because he was obviously a Christian Arab, speaking in Arabic. And Cyril Pileggi scolded me. He said, you're on CMJ property, you either speak Hebrew or you speak English. And he said, you're an English child, you've got to learn to speak English. So that was the beginning of me losing my language. Anyway, of course, with his daughter, obviously children learn languages quickly at that stage, and obviously English became the language. And so it went on from there. So then I stayed with a number of other people at various stages when they were moving. But in due course, the social worker was asked by the government to do something with me. And at first, one of the other children whose parents were also killed, they offered me and it was a girl from another family, to the matron of the CMJ hospital to take us both to England. And Sister Hoskins said, look, I've never been married, I can't look after children, I'll take one child, I'll take the girl. She took the girl, but that ship heading back to England near Gibraltar was torpedoed by the Germans. And the story goes that as the boat turned over...
Hawkins,
H-A-W-K-I-S.
Yes, Doris Hawkins.
Doris Hawkins, that's her.
Yes, that's right. We know that story.
Oh, right.
Did you know Doris Hawkins?
Yes.
You remember her?
I remember her, and she sent me her story. So I actually had the story in writing of how badly she was treated on the lifeboat after.
She was on that lifeboat for 30 days.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, it's so fascinating because I don't know how it happened, but some lady in the Orphaned Hospital in London got my book, the biography called Never Alone, and she wrote to me and she said when Sister Hawkins survived all of that, she ended up working next to me in the hospital. So I knew the whole story. She said it was fascinating to read it in your book. It was just interesting to see that. So anyway, this social worker was asked to do something with me, seeing that didn't work. And eventually, now I'm now 8 or 9 years of age, they said, we've got to get all the Brits out of here because they're all getting killed. And so you've got to go. We said, well, I'm an Australian. And they said, why don't you take this boy with you and get rid of him? Well, she said, I don't belong to him and there's no connection. So they said, well, we'll give him your surname and we'll call him your nephew. So she wrote an affidavit saying that this boy called David Claydon is my nephew. And so they gave me a British passport and we went to Cairo to wait for this ship. Now what was happening was the Second World War, top end of Africa, fought by Monty, had just been won. And what the decision was that everybody above the level of captain would be sent home to New Zealand or Australia, whereas the soldiers had to go and fight in Malta. So they said, we're getting a small boat. They had to finally grab a boat from South Africa and took hold of it, confiscated it, brought it up to Suez, put in naval staff, and then all of us were put onto the boat. So I was in Cairo for about 3 or 4 months. I went on the troop ship, so we got to Australia that way, and then I stayed in various schools and various homes. I didn't see much of the social worker. Occasionally I met her. She was a missionary from India, to India from CMS, and she went back to India. So it's quite a difficult story of how one survives on your own. But I got through that all. Eventually got a scholarship to university, graduated with economics, taught economics, and then went on to head up Scripture Union, both in Australia and eventually in the South Pacific where we started it. Then we started all through East Asia. Did that for 20 years, ran a church for 6 years, and then the Archbishop, that was then Archbishop Don Robinson, asked me to head up the Church Mission Society. So I headed up CMS until I retired.
What else can you tell us about the school and the hospital and CMJ at this time? What do you remember?
So about the hospital, I mean, in those early days, of course, I was very young, but the main point was that I made that decision about Christ. And just to finish that point off, when I arrived in Melbourne on the troop ship, now aged about 9, I'd made the decision then. I said, Lord, you've been with me through some tough, it was pretty tough on my own all those years here, but I had various Christian friends, and a number of times I was very ill, and again Cyril Pileggi looked after me, and I said, I did make a commitment, and I believe because you cared for me, I will serve you when I become an adult. I sort of re-emphasised that decision when I landed in Melbourne. It's very interesting because once I graduated, I was then under some pressure to go on with a doctorate and end up doing sociology. And I finally decided that wasn't the route. My route was to go down a Christian track. And then reflecting back on here, the fact is that the CMJ influence for those years that I was here, mainly particularly through the 2 doctor families, the Pileggians and the Williams of the 2 medical families, that their influence and their fellowship and how they helped me through various problems trying to cope here was what I think helped me to find my feet and to come to that point which I finally called Never Alone, to the point where when Cecily Patterson wrote the biography of me, I said, let's call it Never Alone, because Jesus was with me in Jerusalem, and he's been with me ever since. And so I just praise God for the CMJ staff because that was a big issue. If I hadn't had that support, and also the social worker was a Christian, missionary Christian from CMS, I mean, they were the people who gave me that strong support.
She was a CMS missionary?
She was a CMS missionary, and of course she disappeared once we got to Australia, but she reappeared from time to time when she came back from India. But she left me to function on my own. She didn't bother too much about me. I think she felt, well, you've got to find your own way in life, so I did.
Who else do you...
Well, I suppose that, well, the only other, it's quite separate to them, was I guess the head of Barclays Bank. I'm just losing names. I'll think of it in a moment. He was the manager of Barclays Bank. He ran a Brethren Assembly in his home. Now, his home was, I'll think of the suburb shortly, but today it's all been overbuilt in a very wealthy area. There was a lady called Frida, I don't know what her surname was. She ran a school in Lebanon, but she came down to the CMJ hospital. I met her there a couple of times, and when I came back in '67, which was my first time back here, she actually met me in the grounds of the CMJ. At that stage it wasn't even a school, I don't think.
Right.
And then the Scripture Union Committee was here, that's in '67, and so they got me to speak at an ISF gathering in Tel Aviv. Now everybody in that committee apart from the chairman knew me. The only person, the chairman didn't because he was an American missionary, but the others all knew me. So that was quite interesting, sort of reformation.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
But you came back doing the Lord's work here. That's very fascinating.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I've been back a few times since doing various things. But my main task is, now that I'm retired, is saving persecuted Christians.
Okay, can I ask, your family name was Claydon?
I believe so. I can't swear by that, because I know so little about it. And the trouble is the records and all that detail was in one of those buildings that was bombed. Every day different buildings were bombed.
Well, do you know if your father and mother, they were killed together at the same...
I believe so, yeah. I don't know the circumstances. How did that happen? But I just don't know. I mean, the thing is, I was told nothing. And when I was staying with the Pileggians, they said, well, they didn't know much about it. And the trouble is that the other people they contacted had also been killed, because the best part of the Mandate government leadership was killed. So it's very hard to track things down, but particularly because the building where all the records were was bombed. And I can still picture it, because every morning we used to, that's Mary, their daughter, and I, would wander down the street from the CMJ hospital and up round the Barclays Bank, that particular area between the school and you go down towards the Marston's Gate and up to the Barclays Bank. Those government buildings that were in there were bombed. So every morning we would go down to see which building was bombed last night. You knew the bombing because the noise, and in the meantime bits and all the glass of the windows also fell out. And so we'd see which building was bombed. And I still remember the main building that was bombed, which was a two-storey building, and it had one beautiful set of timber stairway to go upstairs, but at the back it had a spiral metal staircase. When we saw it, I mean, I'd been in it a number of times before, but when we saw it after it was bombed, I said to Mary, you see the spiral staircase, which is still there? I said, that's me. It's the only thing that's left. Everything's gone. And that's how I felt. For me, everything had gone. I had nothing. I didn't have a birthday.
Okay, so do you know how old you were when your parents died?
No, except I was something like two years of age.
Do you know the year in which you were born?
36, but that's a guess. The guess based is on medical examination of my wrist. And so Cyril Pileggi had said, on the basis of the size of your bones, I reckon you're born at 36, and so this is your age. So I chose a date and just made that my birthday.
So now in 38, the Irgun wasn't killing anyone. It was the Arabs.
The Arabs, oh yes.
It was the Arabs. The Arabs didn't start attacking. They attacked a little bit before the war, but they started to this bombing campaign that you would see every day.
That's right.
That was just before the war ended and into to the end of the mandate.
That's right.
So it could be that in 36 or 38 there was a big intifada,
Yep.
and your parents were killed in that.
That's very likely.
If you can think of the name of the man who ran the Brethren Assembly, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Cyril Clark, Cyril Clark, with I think an E on the end of his name, Cyril Clark.
Okay.
He was the director of Barclays Bank for the Middle East.
Uh-huh.
And so he ran a Brethren Assembly at his place. And when the then commissioner was being farewell, this would be halfway through 44, he was going to be farewelled in Jaffa. And on the road down to Jaffa, he had a convoy with him, but a group of, I don't know whether Ergon, but Jewish people dressed as if they were Arabs, pretending to repair the road, so limited to one lane. And then as that convoy came in, they shot at it, trying to kill him. They killed the driver of the car, and the policeman sitting next to him, although got one bullet, he grabbed the wheel and dragged the car so it hit into the cliff face on the left-hand side. The commissioner was okay, his wife got a bullet in her hand, but the convoy said, well, that's it, we're not going any further, so they all turned around and went back. Well then, the Barclays decided they would do the farewell for him, and so I was staying with them at that time, and so I could see from the top level of their house, the whole way from the commissioner's house all the way down the hill around to the Barclays place, police and army people all the way around, and we had a big farewell for them there. So it was part of my life's experience.
You don't remember coming to Christchurch ever? Right?
Oh yes.
You came to this church?
Yep, because being at the CMJ hospital, we used to drive initially, but then with the war getting worse, they lost petrol and they had to keep just one car for emergencies. So the Williams car, which was slightly more modern, was kept, and the Pileggi's lost their car, and so we walked through the old city every Sunday to go to church here.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as we're concerned, we all belong to the CMJ church. Right. And of course, as we walked through with his daughter Mary and me, he would tell us things. This is what happened to Jesus here, and we'd go down, say, down the Via Dolores, see the Bethsaida pool, wander down to the pool of Siloam on another day. We'd wander around different bits and pieces on the way here. So I learned a lot about the old city every Sunday. But when we got here, of course, we had the church, but we also had a Sunday school. That hall across the road there was packed out with kids. Mm-hmm. Now, in those days, they were all expatriates. Mm-hmm. But then, towards the end of my time, of course, they all had to go. The government's got rid of us all. So, I don't know what happened after that. So, that night I was about to go, Mr. Martin came and saw me, farewelled me, gave a little New Testament, and prayed for us, and off we went. We went by train to Cairo. Had a problem because the train was delayed half an hour. Well, being delayed by half an hour meant that the bomb that had been put on the line blew up a goods train instead of our train. And where I was sitting with a window seat, I watched that train being blown up. It was carrying sheep, and most of the carriages fell down the hillside. So I just watched the sheep being burnt alive. But then the problem, we were there for hours while I had to clear it all, repair the line, and eventually we got to Cairo about 14 hours late.
Lord have mercy. And did you go to Cairo with Doris?
To Cairo to...
Did you go with Doris Hawkins to Cairo?
At that time?
Yes.
Yes.
You did.
We stayed in Cairo, but then we went up to Maynooth because the CMS hospital. Mm-hmm. And so the CMS connection was easy, so we just went there and stayed there.
Right, okay.
Until the army said, the boat's ready to come down to Suez. Mm-hmm. And of course, we travelled on our own in the boat, which was a bit unusual. Usually, you have whole troop boats, or with a few naval boats travelling with us. So whilst we had naval officers running the boat, our boat was on our own. And so we zigzagged across the Indian Ocean to avoid being sighted by a plane or a sub. In fact, we did have a sub when we got to Australian waters, which was attacking on behalf of the Japanese. And they torpedoed every boat that was on the shores of the Australian shores, mainly merchant boats. We were warned that this sub was around, would probably get us. In actual fact, it passed us. And we discovered later the reason why it didn't torpedo us was it didn't have any torpedoes left. And so the ship radioed back to Melbourne to say this is what happened. It wasn't quite close enough. We had our own mine things on each side of the ship to drop a mine on it, but this wasn't close enough. So we told them, and they sent out aircraft, and they found it about 300 miles west of Perth, and they bombed it out there.
Okay, well, God bless you. Thank you for all this. This is very encouraging.
Yeah.
And I'm very thrilled that we could, we're very thrilled that we could hear your testimony. So God bless you.
Thank you.
brother.
Lovely to meet you, and thank you for joining us.